Good day, and welcome back. What you just heard inside the Senate Judiciary Committee was not a routine introduction. It was a carefully constructed narrative meant to define Kash Patel before his critics do. Tonight, we are breaking down what that introduction really tells us, why it matters, and what it signals about the fight ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's my honor to introduce Kash Patel, President Trump's nominee to be FBI Director. I've completed due diligence on his life and career, and I'm convinced that Kash possesses significant expertise and ironclad commitment to justice, and he's an outstanding choice to lead the FBI. Kash's parents are Indian immigrants of Gujarati ancestry. They're up here in the front row. The Gujarat state is a melting pot of religions, including Hinduism, Islam, Jainism, with temples, mosques, and other religious sites scattered across the state. His father was raised in Uganda, but his family had to flee the country to escape repression under Idi Amin. His mother was born in Tanzania. They met and married in India and ultimately made their way to New York City by way of Canada, where his parents, along with 7 brothers and sisters and their spouses and at least a half a dozen kids, lived under the same roof. His parents raised Kash in the Hindu faith, and they instilled in him the values of hard work and education. Kash is a devout Hindu, and consistent with his faith, he's shown respect to people of all faiths. Kash attended the University of Richmond, where he earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice and history. He went to Pace University School of Law, where he earned his JD, and an international law certificate from the University College of London, Faculty of Laws. Kash began his career as a public defender in Florida, where he led or co-led more than 60 jury trials in state and federal court. Kash clearly demonstrated a devotion to upholding the rule of law and defending the rights of individuals. Kash led the defense of Jose Buitrago in United States versus Buitrago, a high-profile case in Florida in 2015. Buitrago was one of the Colombian nationals arrested in a major drug bust involving Operation Backrim. Kash and his co-counsel successfully argued that key evidence was withheld by the prosecution, leading to Buitrago's release. I suspect some of Kash's disdain for prosecutorial misconduct stemmed from this experience. Kash was hired as a senior counsel on the House Permanent Select Subcommittee on Intelligence Committee, in 2017. He told me he distinctly remembers my friend Trey Gowdy comment shortly after they were introduced. He said in Trey's dialect, "Kash, Congress is where righteous investigations go to die. I hope you're ready." I think Kash was ready, and he went on to establish a solid reputation for pursuing the facts, and from there, he held senior posts at the NSC, the Department of Defense, and the DNI. Since leaving the administration in 2020, Kash has written articles and books on national security, law, and governance. Through his work as an author, Kash continues to advocate for justice and transparency, and to be ever vigilant in defending our great democracy and the rule of law. Colleagues, I created a Kash bingo card that I have available to any of my colleagues who would like it on the other side of the aisle. Some may view this as an unserious caricature and not appropriate for this committee. Sadly, I consider it a serious caricature of what I expect to be witnessed today. I think we'll have words like enemies list and deep state. I've already X'd out 4 boxes in the opening statements alone. The fact of the matter is, some people will be here to simply substantiate a false narrative. At worst, they may be just going through an unfounded litany of of quotes and half-truths, some of which have already been dispelled by the chairman after the opening statements. Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, in my 10 years in the Senate, I hope I've established a reputation for being fair, doing my homework, and taking tough positions that have been met with harsh criticism. Heck, I've even been censured by my entire state and 30 counties for taking tough positions. And I stand by those decisions today and my decision to support Kash Patel. When President Trump announced his intent to nominate Kash, I contacted Trey Gowdy and others who worked with Kash, and they gave me glowing recommendations. So I called Kash on December the 2nd, and I offered to help him with his nomination. Since then, we have spent hours together, in person and on the phone. I've asked him difficult questions, and I've urged him to reach out to members across the aisle. In fact, Kash Patel has met with 60 members of the U.S. Senate, every member except the last 3 who were sworn in, and the majority of the members on the other side of the dais in this committee and members off the committee. Chair Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, friends and colleagues on the committee, I've completed my due diligence of Kash Patel, and I am honored to provide my strongest recommendation for his confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that introduction.
Over the future of the FBI. If you want clear, contextual coverage like this that goes beyond the clip, make sure you subscribe to the channel now so you do not miss our next breakdown. The chairman's opening remarks were designed to do more than praise a nominee. They framed Kash Patel as a product of immigration, faith, and institutional experience, all rolled into one story. By starting with Patel's family history, Indian immigrants of Gujarati ancestry whose lives passed through Uganda, Tanzania, India, Canada, and finally New York City, the speaker was grounding Patel's identity in resilience and displacement. This is a familiar American political move, but here it carries extra weight. At a moment when federal law enforcement leadership is under intense scrutiny, the message is clear. Patel is being presented as someone shaped by instability, repression, and the consequences of state power gone wrong. If you find this kind of context helpful, subscribe now because we will keep unpacking how personal narratives are used to shape public trust. The emphasis on religion was also deliberate. Calling Patel a devout Hindu who respects all faiths was not incidental. In a polarized environment where accusations of bias and extremism are common, the introduction sought to preemptively neutralize attacks by portraying Patel as values-driven but inclusive. This is not just biography, it is political insulation. The speaker was signaling to colleagues and to the public that faith, in this case, is being framed as a moral compass rather than an ideological weapon. Subscribe to the channel if you want continued analysis on how identity is strategically deployed in confirmation hearings. Then the focus shifted to credentials, and this is where the argument becomes more technical. Patel's education in criminal justice, history, law, and international law was laid out to establish intellectual breadth, but more importantly, his early career as a public defender was highlighted. That choice matters. Public defenders are often invoked in hearings like this to demonstrate commitment to civil liberties, due process, and the rights of the accused. By stressing that Patel led or co-led more than 60 jury trials, the speaker was making a case that Patel understands the justice system from the side that confronts government power, not just wields it. If you want to understand how professional background becomes a proxy for values in Washington, subscribe now. The Jose Padilla case reference was not accidental either. By pointing to a high-profile drug case where evidence was allegedly withheld by prosecutors, the introduction framed Patel as someone shaped by exposure to prosecutorial misconduct. This is critical because it explains, or at least justifies, Patel's later skepticism toward entrenched institutions. The subtext is that his criticism of federal law enforcement is not ideological hostility, but experiential learning. Whether that claim holds up is exactly what this hearing is meant to test. Subscribe to stay with us as we examine how those claims are challenged by senators on both sides. When the narrative moved to Patel's time on Capitol Hill and within the national security apparatus, the tone shifted again. The anecdote about Congress being where righteous investigations go to die was not just humor, it was a warning. It framed Patel as someone entering a system already assumed to be resistant to truth. That framing positions him as an outsider, even while holding insider roles at the Intelligence Committee, the National Security Council, the Department of Defense, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. This dual identity, insider access paired with outsider skepticism, is central to understanding why his nomination is so controversial. If you want ongoing coverage that connects these dots, make sure you subscribe. Finally, the mention of Patel's books and writings since leaving government service was meant to show continuity. The argument being made is that Patel did not abandon public service when he left office, he simply changed platforms. Writing about national security law, governance, and transparency is being presented as evidence of long-term commitment rather than grievance politics. Whether critics accept that framing is another matter, but the intention is unmistakable. This introduction was about legitimacy, credibility, and narrative control. If you value reporting that helps you learn something new, rather than just replay what you already saw, subscribe to the channel now and stay with us.